Every rider has two clocks. One sits on the dash, measuring miles, fuel, and speed. The other beats in the chest, counting summers, friendships, and the rides we never took. We all began the same way. Open roads, endless days, wind that made us feel untouchable. But years pass, and regrets gather quietly. The helmet we bought too cheap, the trip we never made, the bike we let slip away. The chest clock never stops. And before this ride ends, I'll show you the regrets every real rider admits too late, so you don't carry the same weight. Childhood sparks, adult costs. 47% of bikers admit the same regret, and most realize it only after the crash. That is not a scare tactic. It is a confession whispered in garages, at rallies, and around campfires when the helmets are off. A real rider is not the weekend warrior polishing chrome on a sunny Sunday. A real rider is the one who makes the throttle part of his bloodstream, who rides through rain and cold because the bike is not a toy. It is a piece of life. For many, the dream began in childhood. The helmet was a mask, a superhero disguise. The exhaust note was a hymn. The open road was freedom. Then adulthood arrived with its license tests, first bikes, and the thrill of late-night rides down back roads. The freedom felt infinite, but alongside that, joy came the invisible bill no one wanted to pay, the cost of protection. Too many riders spent on speed and looks but cut corners on safety. In Great Britain, investigators list failed to look properly as the single most common factor in fatal or serious collisions. That means it is not always your mistake that ends the ride. Sometimes it is theirs. And when that day comes, thin gloves or a cheap helmet will not carry you through. But the lesson does not hit during the dream. It hits later, when you pass the roadside cross and realize someone else paid it in full. But it hits hardest when you pass the memorial by the roadside. The cross at the roadside. He wasn't breathing, and the only choice was to break the rule. Those words still burn. On a dark road, the rider lay motionless. I was told not to remove the helmet, not to risk a neck injury, but he was gone already. So I pulled it free and pressed life back into him until the ambulance lights drowned out the night. Moments like this shatter illusions. A helmet is not just gear. It is a thin line between a story retold and a name etched into stone. The memorial is still there. Flowers weathered by 16 winters. A cross with names I never knew but honor every time I ride past. Statisticians tell us that helmets cut rider death risk by roughly 1/3 to 2/5. But those are not just numbers. They are fathers who made it home, daughters who walked again, friends who still ride. To dismiss a helmet as vanity or style is to mistake survival for fashion. Every seasoned rider admits the truth. We all wasted money on pipes, paint, and performance while ignoring the only thing that truly mattered. Protection was always the best upgrade, and too often we bought it last. Still, not every scar comes from death. Some arrive through survival, stamped in hospital bills and limps that last a lifetime. But scars don't always come from death. Sometimes they arrive as hospital bills. If this already resonates, tap like so more riders hear it. And share your own story in the comments. Your memory might be the reminder that saves someone else's ride. Knees aren't on back order. A boot costs 200 pounds. A broken leg, 20,000. The math is brutal, and every rider who has slid across tarmac knows it in their bones. Lower extremity injuries are the most common serious wounds for motorcyclists. Ankles, knees, and shins take the punishment. The lucky ones walk away on crutches. The unlucky spend months in hospital beds staring at ceilings and wondering why they rode in trainers. The gear exists. Sturdy boots with bracing. Trousers with armor stitched into the seams. Jackets tested for abrasion resistance. The science is there. Yet riders still gamble because cheap sneakers feel easier than breaking in stiff boots, and denim feels freer than textile panels. Freedom fools us into risk. Emergency rooms do not charge by nostalgia. Average hospital bills for broken legs can run into tens of thousands. Compare that to the cost of proper boots and protective wear, and the logic is undeniable. But logic rarely fuels passion. Regret does. And so the scars pile up, not just on skin, but in bank statements, family stress, and dreams deferred by long recoveries. Still, money and medicine are not the only ways a rider can lose. There are losses that cut deeper when your machine itself is ripped away, and yet some losses hurt even more than money, like the bike stolen from under you. Don't let cheap gear become tomorrow's regret. I've linked trusted helmets, gloves, and jackets in the description. Gear that trades vanity for survival, theft, brotherhood, and time. They twisted my bars, but what broke was my faith. It happened on a city street. Cheap locks snapped. The steering column bent. The machine I trusted felt suddenly fragile. Every rider knows that theft is not just financial. It feels like violation, like a betrayal of trust between you and the world you ride through. For a moment, it shakes the belief that the road is yours. Yet on the other side of betrayal lies brotherhood. The nod exchanged with a stranger at a junction. The wave from a rider you will never meet again. The quiet certainty that if you broke down on the roadside, another biker would pull over to help. Locks can be cut, but loyalty cannot. And still, even brotherhood cannot stop the thief that comes for every rider: time. You can buy stronger locks, you can buy sturdier boots, you can even buy a safer helmet, but you cannot buy another summer. Every postponed trip, every delayed adventure, is a ride stolen by the ticking clock. Theft teaches us that gear is replaceable. Time teaches us that rides are not. The cruelest regret is not losing a bike to thieves. It is losing miles to hesitation, fear, or delay. Because what every real rider carries is not the weight of metal or leather. It is the rides we never took. Because the cruelest regret isn't about things. It's about the rides you never took. The wrong helmet, the wrong day. Half a helmet, twice the chance of brain trauma. That is the brutal equation riders whisper after funerals and emergency room visits. Helmets are not equal, yet too many of us have treated them like fashion accessories instead of lifelines. A half lid feels light, open, rebellious. The wind strokes your face and you imagine freedom without barriers. But freedom is fragile when asphalt is inches away. Studies comparing open helmets to full-face designs reveal the cruel truth. An open helmet rider is far more likely to suffer a traumatic brain injury. A full-face helmet, with its chin bar and wider coverage, reduces impact severity and preserves the ability to speak, breathe, and live. The difference is not a minor detail. It is the line between walking away and never walking again. Every rider remembers the first helmet they bought. For many, it was the cheapest one on the rack, chosen for price or looks. Later, those same riders admit they should have saved longer, invested deeper, and protected smarter. Helmets are not just plastic shells. They are guardians of memory, identity, and future summers. The wrong helmet on the wrong day is the kind of regret you cannot undo. Riders tell themselves they will upgrade after the next paycheck, after the next season. Some never get that chance. But sometimes the regret isn't about protection, it's about inheritance. My father's lapsed license. He didn't stop riding, life just outpaced him. That is how my father explained his absence from two wheels. As a young man, he lived for two-stroke summers. He scraped savings for an old Suzuki, spent nights tinkering, and roared through country lanes with wind in his teeth. Then responsibility arrived like a headwind. Bills, work, family. His bike blew an engine, and the dream went quiet. Decades later, he returned. Older, slower, more cautious, but with the same spark in his eyes. His story is not unique. Many midlife riders fall back into the saddle after years away, but the road has changed. Traffic is heavier, cars are faster, reflexes are slower, the risks multiply. Crash reports confirm that riders in middle age face unique dangers, often failing to negotiate bends or misjudging turning speeds. These mistakes are not from lack of passion, but from rusted habits and faded skills. The legacy my father gave me was not his old bike. It was the lesson that real riders respect time. He admitted his mistakes openly, urging me to take training seriously and never cheap out on gear. His stories of gravel rash and bent frames were not bravado. They were warnings wrapped in love. Riding is not just horsepower passed down through generations. It is habits, wisdom, and caution. What you hand to your children is not the engine you rode, but the discipline you carried. And the legacy we dodge most often? The one last ride we keep postponing. The ride that never happens. The scariest crash is the one where the calendar wins. Riders often fantasize about epic tours, coast-to-coast odysseys, or simple weekends lost in winding hills. Yet too often those dreams rot beneath tarps while life piles up excuses. The city steals more than bikes. It steals weekends, daylight, and energy. Work deadlines replace trip planning. Family obligations mute the call of the throttle. Even students with modest machines in crowded towns find their adventures reduced to commutes, their tires squared by stoplights rather than carved by corners. Riders tell themselves next summer will be different. Next summer they will take that trip. Next summer they will chase the horizon, but next summer is never guaranteed. Every postponed ride is a theft of joy. The odometer does not stop while you hesitate. Age creeps in quietly. Knees stiffen. Friends move on. Bikes depreciate. All that remains is the regret of journeys never taken. The only way to break the cycle is to choose. Choose the weekend. Choose the route. Send the message to the friend who always said yes. Set the date. Because rides do not happen by accident, they happen by intention. But courage isn't only in riding fast. It's in learning all over again. Back to school. The bravest riders aren't fearless. They're trained. That truth is hard to swallow for those who once believed bravery meant twisting the throttle harder. Real courage is not recklessness. It is humility, the willingness to admit you still have something to learn. Advanced rider courses reveal how little most of us know. Instructors drill braking under pressure, cornering lines, wet road strategies, and survival positioning in traffic. They expose the habits we never questioned, the shortcuts that could one day cost us everything. Data from Great Britain confirms that one of the most common crash causes for motorcyclists is failing to negotiate bends, training tackles that head on, turning sharp corners from death traps into controlled arcs. For a rider who returns after years away, or for the young commuter learning the ropes, training is not optional. It is the key to stretching summers into decades. Every skill sharpened is another regret avoided. Gear shields the body, but skill shields the future. Together, they form the only real armor worth trusting. Walking back into a classroom feels strange after years of independence on the road. But nothing feels better than walking back out knowing you are safer, sharper, and stronger than before. And yet, some lessons only grief can teach. The cross we nod to. Grief teaches faster than manuals. Every rider who has passed a roadside memorial knows this lesson. A cross nailed into soil, a helmet hung on a fence post, flowers faded by rain. These images stick longer than any chapter of a training guide. They remind us of the fragility we live with every time we straddle a machine designed for speed, but not for mercy. In Great Britain, multiple motorcyclists lose their lives every single week. The official reports reduce these tragedies to statistics, but riders see them as constant echoes. Each ride past a memorial becomes a ritual, a nod of respect, a tightening of the grip, a silent vow to make it home safe. The nod is not for the fallen alone. It is for the people waiting at home, parents, partners, children. When you gear up with proper armor, it is not vanity, it is love. A helmet says, "I want to come back." Gloves say, "I will still hold you." Boots say, "I will still walk beside you." These reminders sting, but they also connect. They whisper that the road is shared, the risks are real, and the choice to protect yourself is a choice to honor those who cannot. But love can also mean giving, not just surviving. Riding for others. The best ride I'll ever take might not be mine. That is the spirit behind blood bikers and volunteer couriers who carry life-saving supplies through the night. They ride not for thrill or vanity, but to give strangers a chance to see another sunrise. Becoming a blood biker demands more than enthusiasm. It requires advanced training, discipline, and a commitment to safety. Riders equip themselves with reflective gear, heated gloves, reliable lighting, and strategies to manage fatigue on long shifts. The road at 2 in the morning is unforgiving, but so are the stakes when blood or medicine must arrive quickly. Service transforms the way you see traffic. Cars are no longer obstacles. They are opportunities to deliver hope. Corners are not challenges to conquer, but paths to carry life around. The bike becomes less about identity and more about responsibility. Safer riding extends what you can give. Every skill learned, every piece of upgraded gear multiplies your ability to serve. You are not just protecting yourself, you are protecting the mission. And once you have felt the purpose of riding for others, the ordinary Sunday cruise never feels the same again. And service changes how you see not just traffic, but time itself. If these stories matter to you, subscribe now. Every week we uncover the truths riders rarely speak out loud, and missing the next one might mean missing your own wake-up call. The romance of scarcity. Motorcycling is a love affair with summers you'll never get back. Each season feels both endless and fleeting. The first learner plates, the first wobbly U-turn, the first taste of speed beyond fear. They all live in memory like photographs you cannot retake. Nostalgia is stitched into every rider's story. The cheap two-stroke that barely ran, the cross-country road trip you barely afforded, the rain-soaked commute that still felt like freedom. These are treasures, not inconveniences. Yet beneath the romance lies scarcity. There will only be so many summers, so many dawn rides, so many fuel stops where the conversation with strangers feels like family. Here lies another reason to invest in gear. Proper jackets, boots, and helmets cost money, but hospital stays cost lives. One study after another shows that medical bills from severe crashes can erase years of savings. Choosing protection is not just avoiding debt, it is buying the chance for more summers, more memories. Investing in gear is buying tomorrow's nostalgia in advance. It is ensuring that when you look back, you remember roads ridden, not seasons lost to recovery. And some investments are stitched in leather and laced in boots. Boots as love letters. A boot is a love letter to your future gait. Riders laugh at poetry, but when the years pile up and knees ache, those words stop being funny. Mobility is not abstract. It is the freedom to stand, to walk, to climb stairs without pain. Boots and protective trousers do more than guard against scrapes. They protect the simple dignity of movement. Every stitch is a promise that tomorrow you will still be able to walk beside your children, dance with your partner, or stand proudly next to your machine. Protecting mobility is protecting identity. Without it, the ride is not the only thing you lose. Riders often pass down bikes, jackets, or helmets as inheritance. But the truest inheritance is the ability to walk into old age with stories instead of injuries. Boots are not just purchases, they are investments in the body that will carry the soul long after the bike is gone. And as much as individuals can change habits, culture and policy move even faster. The way riders approach gear tomorrow may not look like today, because society itself is rewriting the rules. Every scuff on a boot is a sentence in the story of survival. It is proof that leather took the strike, so bone did not. These marks are reminders that prevention writes quieter, longer chapters than recovery ever could. But culture and policy can rewrite habits faster than we can. The economics of pain. One ER bill can wipe out a decade of savings. Those words are not exaggeration. They are the quiet truth behind too many household bankruptcies after motorcycle crashes. Emergency rooms do not charge in nostalgia or brotherhood. They charge in invoices stacked higher than helmets. A single broken femur can mean weeks in traction and tens of thousands in medical costs. Long-term rehabilitation, physiotherapy, and lost wages multiply the burden. Insurers know this and price accordingly. Premiums rise for riders without proper protection, and some companies now offer discounts when proof of advanced gear is provided. Dealerships, too, have started to bundle helmet and jacket packages into financing, framing safety not as an afterthought but as part of the sale. The economics are shifting. Riders who once hesitated at the cost of proper boots or an airbag vest now recognize them as hedges against financial ruin. Gear is not an expense, it is an investment. The money spent on quality protection buys not only skin and bone, but also stability for families who depend on the rider's income. Every pound spent on gloves is a pound saved against future hospital bills. Every pound spent on boots is an anchor against debt. Yet markets move slowly, and profit often trumps prevention. That is when another hand steps in, not the invisible one of economics, but the iron one of law. Every crash echoes beyond the rider, rippling through households, workplaces, and communities that shoulder the cost. When safety is dismissed as optional, the invoice is collective. Gear is cheaper than grief, and preparation is kinder than financial devastation. And when the market drags its feet, politics steps in. When laws do what warnings can't, one regulation can save more lives than 1,000 PSAs. Riders often resist rules, priding themselves on freedom. Yet history shows that legislation succeeds where lectures fail. In the United States, states with universal helmet laws see far fewer head injuries and fatalities. The data is blunt. Wearing helmets saves thousands of lives each year. Where laws are partial or optional, hospitals fill with riders who believed freedom was worth the risk. Across the Atlantic, the United Kingdom enforces strict helmet standards. Riders there may grumble, but the cultural baseline has shifted. It is rare to see anyone attempt a journey without a lid. Regulation creates a floor. It says, this is the minimum you must do to stay alive. Above that floor, culture determines how high riders climb. Some choose the cheapest legal option. Others build on it with armored trousers, boots, and advanced training. Laws cannot replace wisdom, but they can prevent the worst tragedies. They protect not only riders, but also families, communities, and healthcare systems strained by preventable injuries. They make safety the default rather than the exception. Still, rules are only part of the story. Standards are not written only in parliaments and capitals. They are forged in workshops, clubs, and union halls where riders look out for one another. Regulations are never romantic, but they carry weight in places passion alone cannot reach. A simple statute can spare families untold grief, reminding us that freedom and responsibility are not opposites, but partners riding side by side on every road. And sometimes those standards are forged on the shop floor. The Union of Leather and Labor. Unions don't just fight layoffs, they fight for armor. In an age where gig couriers and delivery riders flood city streets, protective gear becomes a labor issue as much as a personal one. Many of these riders earn barely enough to cover rent, let alone high-quality boots or jackets. Without collective pressure, companies are content to let them carry risk alone. That is changing. Some unions now negotiate for stipends to cover helmets and gloves, insisting that no worker should gamble their body for a paycheck. Community groups set up donation bins at dealerships, redistributing used but serviceable gear to new riders who cannot yet afford the best. Clubs establish mentorship programs where veterans lend both advice and spare equipment to those just starting out. The message is clear: gear is not just individual choice, it is collective responsibility. When a rider goes down, it is not only their pain, it is lost labor, lost income, and shared grief. Protecting workers protects communities, yet even as institutions fight for safety, each rider knows there is one clock no contract can slow. The clock is not mechanical nor digital. It beats in the chest and ticks louder with every passing season. When riders share gear, skills, and solidarity, they are proving that safety is not just survival, but dignity. A jacket passed down, a helmet donated, a union's demand. All remind us that collective care builds stronger, longer journeys. But the final clock is personal, and it ticks louder every season. The last ride. Every rider has two clocks, the one on the dash and the one in their chest. The dash clock measures miles, minutes, and fuel stops. The chest clock measures summers, friendships, and sunsets you will never see again. The dash can be reset, the chest cannot. The greatest regret riders confess is not failing to buy the right helmet or boots, though those mistakes leave scars. The deepest regret is postponing the ride until it was too late, believing there would always be another summer, another weekend, another chance. Tomorrow is the lie riders tell themselves until tomorrow never comes. So the message is simple: ride now, even if it is just one more. Gear up, plan safely, and choose to live the road instead of only remembering it. Every mile ridden is one less regret. Every mile postponed is one more debt you will never repay. This story does not end with statistics or warnings. It ends with an invitation. Take the keys from the table. Look at the weather. Send the message to the friend who is still waiting. And then ride, because someday you will wish you had. Here is the part riders rarely say out loud. Joy is not guaranteed, it is seized. The ride you take today might not be perfect, but it will be real, and reality always outweighs the dream left unfinished. What is your biggest riding regret? Share it, because your story may keep another rider in the saddle a little longer. The weather looks friendly, the bike is waiting. You already know what to do. Every rider leaves behind miles, memories, and mistakes. But the one choice you still control is whether tomorrow becomes another story of regret or another ride worth remembering. So gear up, take the road, and share your truth below, because your words might guide someone else back into the saddle. And if you want more stories that speak to riders like us, subscribe now. The next ride begins together.